Hello world of YouTube and welcome to another Reformatted Discography review, the segment where I'm going to take a look at all of the old discography reviews I did pre the revival of it and put them into the new format that I've done of the revival, which is involving rankings, fake awards, and updating them with the albums I may or may not have talked about since I last did my review of that particular band. And the band up for dissection this time is Linkin Park. I'm going to be sitting down and talking about their 7-album run, but before I do that, I do want to make a couple of discussion points of intrigue in their discography right now. Now, while I've stopped talking about remix albums, and I'm not talking about any of the other remix albums Linkin Park has done in their career, even though, well, technically I am. But I'm not talking about any post these two entries because I don't feel like they're as detrimental to Linkin Park's sound as Reanimation and the next one I'm going to talk about. While in their beginning, Linkin Park really lended a hand to the disenfranchised youth, they contributed a lot to the nu metal scene, and that's evident with some of the track listing on here, like Aaron Lewis and Jonathan Davis coming in and contributing vocals and contributing to that aggro nature that the band was going for. I feel like this also gave them some cred to some people in the underground hip-hop scene, and I'll be honest, it was my gateway into some rappers that I really, really enjoy. Because, hey, I may have been exposed to hip-hop, but I'll guarantee you, when I was a kid, I was not listening to fucking Pharaoh Monch and Black Thought as much as I should have anyway. And they're on here, along with fucking Chowly Tuna from fucking Jurassic 5. This has a smorgasbord of, like, hip-hop icons. And Linkin Park got him in here to reinterpolate tracks from Hybrid Theory in a pretty interesting way. Again, they did remix albums for, like, Living Things, and that's cool, and they worked with Steve Aoki a lot, and that's cool for, like, the electronic scene. But by that point in their career, Linkin Park were already kind of icons in their respective scenes. But for them to come out really early on, like, post-debut, and get all of these dudes on this project to really sort of flesh out some of the ideas from Hybrid Theory more, I think is a really awesome thing. And again, while some kind of want to shit talk on the hip-hop aspect of Linkin Park, especially on Hybrid Theory, this kind of gave them some, like, legitimacy and cred to some people, and I think that it's important to talk about. You know, it's also, I think it's cool. Like, I don't really give a fuck about Recharge, but I'll spin Reanimation sometimes because I think it's worth it. You know, I think that it's a cool sort of deviation if you do like Hybrid Theory. I think it sort of reaffirms some of the stylistic choices the band was going for in their genesis very well.
It starts with one thing, I don't know why.
And I feel like Collision Course does something similar. It was one of my gateways into the mashup genre. And again, I liked Jay-Z that I had heard up to 2004, but I would not consider myself a connoisseur of Jay-Z and Kanye West. But you know what? Black Album is my favorite Jay-Z album, and that happens to be a lot of what's touch on Collision Course, and I wouldn't say that's not necessarily a coincidence. I do like that Jay-Z was kind of spreading himself all over the place in the 2000s, and that included a mashup record with Linkin Park, a project that I do really enjoy still, and I feel like it's a solid mashup entry point into the mashup genre if you're looking for one, honestly. Now, let's talk about their albums proper.
Enemies trying to read me, you're all looking highly illiterate.
So, I feel like this is a lot of people's least favorite Linkin Park records, but it's also the one a lot of people are going to go to bat for now, post Chester's passing. And while, yes, Chester's passing sheds a lot of light on the lyrics on this record on tracks like Nobody Can Save Me, Heavy, Sorry for Now, and the title track, which was an homage to Chris Cornell, who killed himself in a very similar way to how Chester did. It doesn't take away from the badness that's here, or the dullness in which the messages are conveyed. I I don't want to spit on Chester's grave, so I'm not going to. He is a very talented singer. He's a very talented artist, and he helped a lot of people who were going through their own complications growing up, who didn't necessarily know how to channel their pent-up emotions. Chester's voice was a good conduit of expression through, osmosis. But this album just didn't resonate with me, and I feel like a lot of people who are fans of Linkin Park feel the same way. I I actually like the title track on here, and I like Good Goodbye. I think Pusha T and Stormzy, their contributions add a lot. I can't say the same for Heavy, which is one of many dull, lifeless, sterile, Gen Z sounding pop tunes. The drop on Sorry for Now is god awful. I hate the drop on that song, and I hate the hi-hats on it. They're fucking terrible. There's a lot of bad production choices on this record. I don't think that it's too off to say that it sounds pandery. I know that one of the things they said about this record was that they wrote it for their kids, and it feels like it. It feels like the most dad-centric Linkin Park record. And, again, I'm not trying to spit on Chester's words. I'm more trying to criticize the way that they were delivered. I really don't like this record. It's one that, when revisiting it to do this, I kind of liked some of the textures in some of the songs. I think the opener, Nobody Can Save Me, is a decent opener. Again, I like the sentiment of Sorry for Now, especially in hindsight. It feels a lot more potent, but a lot of the dull moments still don't do anything for me. And I feel like this is more for morbid curiosity. If you're wanting to see what everyone has talked about with this project, listen to it. But I don't feel like it's that essential in Linkin Park's discography, personally.
Stomach to get him, gone already hit him. Yeah, you gotta be kidding. Wanna talk?
What's funny, when this album had initially come out, I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the ideas within it, and I feel like as time has gone on, while I've been kind of warmed up to some of the concepts, this album as a whole just feels lost in the echo.
Fuck you.
While I initially criticized the band for hailing this as a return to form, I really kind of get it now. Like, it has different textures and a different vibe as a whole. It feels a lot more optimistic in some of the chords it uses and everything. But the concept, the sonic concept of the album, feels very Linkin Park, It feels like they're tapping more into their digital side. Because while they were known for their super big chugga riffs and their intense, very 2000s production, they were also very digitally tinged. They had a lot of samples, a lot of weird glitchy things interloped into their sounds. And this record does reinforce a lot of that, and while there may have been some of that on A Thousand Suns, it's less lyrically conceptual, so it just feels like its own kind of back to basics in that regard as well. And I don't mind that. There are some things I still am not the biggest fan of. Like, I don't like the super obnoxiously very dubstep-inspired production, like on tracks like Lies Rooted Misery. I like the intensity vocally of that song, and I feel like Chester's vocals really match the intensity of the electronics. But it's moments like that juxtaposed with some really bland ballads like Castle of Glass and Powerless that just don't leave the best taste in my mouth. I feel like where this record does shine is when it successfully sort of either captures or reinterprets classic Linkin Park in the vein of like a victimized, or turns that sort of rap rock sound with the contemporary electronic twist into a decent song like Lost in the Echo or Burn It Down. I just feel like as a whole, this album is a little too bland across the board. Because even the songs that don't necessarily try to be too offshoot, like too much of an offshoot from Linkin Park's sound. They sound just very generic instead, like Skin to Bone, or again, I'll Be Gone. You know, there's a lot of tracks on here that are incredibly forgettable, that I feel like makes this album completely forgettable as a result. I feel like if you like classic Linkin Park and you want a more 2010s version of that, cherry pick the songs you like and maybe kind of leave the rest behind. I really have dogged on this record in the past, and you know, it's really just okay. You know, while they were sort of branching out their sound away from the nu metal tendencies that coded their first couple of releases, and as, again, I've gotten older, I can kind of respect that prospect. I still don't like the pacing of this record. This record is split so dead, with most of it being like intense song, ballad, intense song, ballad, intense song, ballad, and it's such a jarring listening experience. Out of all of Linkin Park's records, I feel like this is the most redactable, and not in the sense of like straight up just removing songs and replacing them, but mostly rearranging them, because I feel like if you rearrange this record, maybe cut a couple of the really underwhelming cuts, you could make a more decent listening experience out of this record. You know, it's records like this that really, where I really harp on why pacing is important with a record. Track sequencing is detrimental to an album and how you sell it to people. You know, I get maybe why they paced it like this, but it just, like, it creates this jarring experience. There's some songs that I think are better than others. You know, there's a handful of tracks on here that I really enjoy still, even this far removed from this record. Like, I love Giving Up. I think it's an incredible note to really start the record off on. I think No More Sorrow is another heavier rock cut as well. I think Bleed It Out is, still a little, but I like some of the instrumentation in it. I like the sort of buoyant energy that it provides. And even some of the softer moments I enjoy, like the little things you give away. Shadow of the Day is okay. You know, Leave Out All the Rest, another decent, softer cut. But this record just has some moments, a little underwhelming. Pacing, a little fucked up. I feel like if you haven't listened to this record in a while and you enjoy Linkin Park as a whole, give this another spin. You know, you may be surprised at how much it holds up in comparison to some of their later material. You know, it's certainly still, as you can tell, not their best, but it's got some redeemable qualities on it. Again, I feel like this is a cherry-picking experience by the by, because I feel like either you really like this record as a whole, which I feel like is a minority, or you kind of already cherry-pick the songs you enjoy from it and just go from there. It's a point I feel like you need to get to if you want to get into Linkin Park, to kind of give you context to their new sound, or like their post-METEORA sound. I feel like if you want to be a completionist to Linkin Park, if you really want to get to their post 2005 material, you kind of have to get to Minutes to Midnight. It's not the best record, but it's kind of an important record of the band's sound, because they were really trying to branch out from their edgy beginnings into something a little more mature, which they do flourish out more gratifyingly on records like, you know, for all of the shit I gave Minutes to Midnight for being paced weirdly, 1,000 Suns kind of falls in a similar vein. I think this record's a little underrated in the Linkin Park fandom, but I also get it. This record kind of takes forever to get started. 2 intros, not really needed. I know that it's a concept record, and so like you may feel like you need to set the stage, but 2 intro tracks and then a ballad to open it up that's immediately followed by another interlude. Too much. Cut that shit. Cut it. I love Burning in the Skies. I think it's an incredible actual opening track, but you don't need to surround it with intros and interludes. It's unnecessary. And the focus on interludes and instrumental breaks is what bogs this record down for me personally. You know, I like this record. I think that it has some of the better standout moments post METEORA Linkin Park as a whole, even though there's another post METEORA Linkin Park record above this. But like Blackout's an incredibly intense moment that has some cool electronics. I love the rapping on When They Come For Me. Again, I love Burning in the Skies. I think it's one of the better, softer moments in their career as a whole. While I understand people's distaste for Wretches and Kings, I like the electronics in it. There's a lot of ideas on here that I enjoy. I like Robot Boy. There's a lot of cool songs on here that I feel like are just on a record that's too much. It's way too much. You know, I said in my initial review that this album felt like the briefest Linkin Park record, even though it's not the shortest at all. And I still kind of feel that way. I was listening to it for this review, and I was like, God damn, I feel like I'm already halfway through this thing. And it's, again, because of that pacing. Again, I'm going to say this. Sequencing in a record is very important. It's why I have a show like Redacted. Because while I'm not, you know, while people are against the playlistification of music, I feel like utilizing that concept to make a record sound smoother is super cool. And I feel like some records need it to make them a better listening experience. And Minutes to Midnight and 1,000 Suns are definitely those. While I feel like redacting this record would take away from the concept too much, I could see why some would do it. And again, like Minutes to Midnight, I would understand if people just cherry pick the songs that they enjoy. Again, I feel like if you like METEORA, you honestly would like records like METEORA and Hybrid Theory. You would like elements of 1,000 Suns to the point that you would actually probably excuse some of the shortcomings that are in this record structurally. It is what it is, you know. I feel like it's another one of those, it's another next step, similarly to Minutes to Midnight. But I feel like this and Minutes to Midnight are the first two records that I feel like you could actually sit through and not hate your experience, even if you end up walking away cherry picking the records or cherry picking the songs that you do enjoy. I feel like they're actually worth your time in a way that Living Things and One More Light just aren't. IMO.
With the ghost of yesterday.
What's funny is when 2014 was going on, I didn't listen to this record just because I had so much shit going on. But as time has gone on and I've revisited, like I've come back to this record after having it fall under my radar, I was kind of surprised because like Linkin Park weren't setting themselves up to make this record, but I enjoy that they did, and I like that they've made this much more aggressively driven rock-centric release in a decade where they kind of abandoned their rock ideals in favor of more electronic leanings. But I like this project. I think it's really interesting. But what's funny is a lot of people kind of feel the same way, and this record's actually pretty well looked fondly upon in the community from what I understand. But for good reason. You know, it's well-paced, it's tight, even with its lengthier song lengths and lack of real interludes outside of a couple instances. They use their time here pretty consistently. I love the opener, Kings to the Kingdom. I love a lot of the usage of guests outside of one glaring one in particular. I think Paige Hamilton does a good job. I like Rakim on the song that he's on. And you can feel Darren's guitars being a presence on Rebellion. The riff on there is much thicker. I love War. I think War is an incredibly brief but tight moment that feels like something you would see like early Offspring or like another early California punk band do. Like it's a decent cut. Where I feel like this record falters are tracks like Drawbar, which criminally underutilized Tom Morello, or Until It's Gone, which is a boring as sin, repetitive, soft moment. While I don't flack them for trying to add softer moments on here, obviously, I feel like as a whole, they falter more on those songs than they do the more aggressive moments. And given that this album was more made for them as kids, like they said in interviews, this was the record they felt like they would have wanted to hear as kids. It's interesting that the softer moments are the parts where they falter as a whole. But it's not all bad. I like Final Masquerade well enough. I like A Line in the Sand well enough. Like, there's other tracks on here that aren't necessarily full-on aggression all the time that get across their message really well or get across a song that's pretty decent. But I feel like post-early Linkin Park, this is the closest they came to getting that good again. And it's not because it tries to do the same thing, but their experimentation sonically churned out a decent project, you know? I feel like this is what they were trying to do on Minutes to Midnight, but couldn't quite stick the landing. You know, I feel like if you like Minutes to Midnight, but you're like, man, this needs to be better, listen to The Hunting Party. It's a much better version of that project. And I feel like if you want to hear... if you're listening to Linkin Park and you know they've done other things and you want like another gateway into that, this is a better gateway into that. Or, alternatively, if you're not much of a rap rock fan and you want to get into Linkin Park, because honestly, if you don't like rap rock, you'll probably like a lot of the other records that I've already talked about more. Listen to this, see if it sits with you, then go to like, I don't know, 1,000 Suns or Living Things and see if the electronic leanings are more your thing, and if not, listen to their early work, because this is like a decent gateway record into the band, because it's not bogged down in rap rock trends, it's not bogged down in electronic trends, it's just kind of a cut-the-shit rock album that has some aggressive moments to it. It's not terrible, and I feel like, you know, a lot of Linkin Park fans know that, but those that kind of write off Linkin Park don't necessarily know that. So, there you go. I mean, you guys knew. Anybody who knows Linkin Park knows this and the next record are gonna be in my top 2. You may just not know where. And yeah, I like Hybrid Theory a little less than Meteora. Not for slack to Hybrid Theory. I think that it is understandably one of the most successful records ever for a good reason. It channeled, you know, disenfranchisement with that rap rock scene perfectly in its time. I just feel like out of all of their records, this has moments that are the most dated. The absolute most dated. There are some tracks I still fucking adore from this record, like Paper Cut, Points of Authority, Runaway, A Place for My Head, Cure for the Itch. There's a lot of Forgotten. There's a lot of tracks on here that I feel like even if you're not a fan of this genre, you can enjoy those songs. You know, I understand why people knock on tracks like One Step Closer or In the End or Crawling, because they have their moments of kind of cringe. They're like diet cringe, maybe even full-blown cringe to some people. If you are a true, edgy, sad guy, I mean, I get it. You know, I felt like this record resonated with me too. That's why I was a big Linkin Park fan back in the day. Not even just the cringy songs aside, though. That's why I still hold it to a high regard. And I love the production on this thing. It is they masterfully like cleaned up that aggressive aesthetic very well. I love the digital flourishments on this thing that they would flesh out more on the next project. I love the turntablism. I love that they actually like utilized their band as a whole really, really well. I like Chester screaming on here, and I love Mike's rapping. You know, clearly you guys know I like hip-hop, and you guys know I'm kind of a snob about hip-hop, but, like, I get nostalgic for Mike Shinoda's rapping, man. It's a style that's very indebted to its genre, but, like, as somebody who may have gone on to, like, full-blown rap, I get nostalgic for the sounds on here, because it's, like, it's very of its time in a very iconic sort of way. If you like rap rock, you've already listened to this record. If you haven't listened to rap rock and you haven't listened to or nu metal and you want like a taste of the best of it, Hybrid Theory is kind of one of those records, man. You know, and if you're wanting to get into Linkin Park and you want like the purest, most adolescent form of their music, Hybrid Theory is the way to go. You know, I don't think it's the perfect starting point, but I think it's one if you want to start there and then move on to the much better record, which is
Rise from the ashes of stylistic division with these non-stop lyrics alive.
I fucking adore this project, man. Again, for its short runtime, they seemingly utilize every single second very, very well. They doubled down on the digital aesthetics in incredible ways. The opening of Lying From You, the opening of Hit the Floor, the strings on Faint, the glitchiness on Breaking the Habit. That digital aesthetic that's so very 2000s, and again, the best way. This is a timeless slice of time. I think I've used that phrase on here before, but if not, there are some records that are just timeless slices of time. They perfectly encapsulate an era of music so well, and yet because of how it's written, it just also kind of transcends that. And I feel like they did a good job at breaking away from a lot of the adolescent tendencies that coded Hybrid Theory in a gratifying way. You know, they still have moments that are a little sort of like high school standing in the rain sad, like Hit the Floor, or Numb to a degree. Numb being sort of the poster child anthem where like you're meant to be better, but you're fucking not, and that's your problem. You gotta live in a shadow. You gotta do that. Like it's one of those kind of songs. But like they do a good job of just tapping into feeling disenfranchised across the board, like Nobody's Listening, which is an incredible song. That's like the most hip hop Linkin Park song. But that song fucking slaps. Like, the beat on there is actually really, really good. I love the flute sample that's in there. I love the punchy production. The guitar could do without, but it's Linkin Park, so it's gotta be in here. But, like, that, again, Breaking the Habit, you know, dealing with your own addiction, stuff like that. They do a good job at making their brand of disenfranchisement more universal. And I feel like that's why it's my favorite record. You know, I don't have to wince at some of the lyrics, and I don't have to sort of be like, it's because of its era, you know? It's because of its era and the genre it's in. Sure, it has nu metal tendencies, and that production is so very nu metal, but they do a good job at, like, just making it work in a way that transcends a lot of what that genre was churning out in its own way, and it solidified that they were, like, the peak version of decent rap rock and rap metal. And yeah, I love METEORA. It was the last record I checked out, like I revisited before doing this review, and I was still fucking gobsmacked at how great this album was paced, how tight it felt. Again, it utilizes every single second it has very, very well, and I appreciate that. You know, it's got good hooks, it's got good singing from Chester. It's got good harmonizing with Mike. Mike's rapping is on point on this project, and yeah, that's why it's my favorite Linkin Park record. If you like METEORA and you want a better version of that, if you like Hybrid Theory and you want a better version, go to METEORA. That's to like fully appreciate most of the Linkin Park experience. But if you want the best version of rap rock era Linkin Park, just listen to METEORA and maybe go back to Hybrid Theory. But that's just my thoughts on it. And that's actually my thoughts on Linkin Park's entire discography. What did you think about it? Did you like this video? Did you not? Let me know in those comments down below. But if you did like it, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general notary content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons if you would like to join their ranks. Get early access to content. The Patreon cuts of all of the discography reviews, which this one went up in June of 2020, just to give you guys perspective on how much you're missing out on. I drop these once a month on there. I only drop them every other month on here, so you're missing out on some golden shit. With, again, extended cuts to talk about my thoughts about the band as time has gone on, all that sort of stuff. If you want to go join the folks on the Patreon to get early access to content, exclusive content, and help drive the community, it's linked in the description. I'm going to get out of here. I've been Foul Rack. You guys have good days, lives, situations, and I'll see you another day.